lost all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. I'm absolutely happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of our journey through the Paranormal Portal once again. It's always an amazing pleasure and one which I take great honor in bringing to you every day. Every day, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on YouTube. We got a Night Terrors going on, or the 2-hour shows, whichever it may be at that time, but we're always here, always bringing you the best entertainment I know how, and so I hope you'll do your best to spread the word to people you know that may love the paranormal as well. Together we can make this an enigma, make it a monolith of paranormal entertainment. I don't know. Hopefully it'll get bigger and bigger, but thank you so much to all of you who have been working to spread the word about the portal. It's been amazing and great, and I love you very much for that. Tonight, of course, another night of ghostly encounters, so I hope you guys are ready. Kick back, relax, grab a beverage, turn down the lights, make yourself comfortable, and get ready, because it's time for bed. Thank you very much. We are back, and I am back, and really, I was guest on Beyond the Veil today with my great friend Chris Gio. He and I did I don't know, it was 2.5 or 3 hours together, almost 3 hours. It was a great time. It was one of those things that he and I were just talking. He's like, "Hey, you want to do a stream?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So we got together and did a show, and it was really fantastic. I mean, it's a great time to get together with him. Chris and I have known each other for years and years, and it was a great experience. It always has been. I've been guest on that show before, and it's always great discussions, amazing participation from the audience. People were calling in and being a part of it. It was a great honor. So I'm glad if you guys were able to catch that earlier. I did put out notices as soon as I knew, I put out notices that we were going to do it on Facebook. And so if you're not following us on Facebook, you're going to miss those kind of things. And there's not much I can do about it. But if you want to keep up with the show and keep up with what's going on, definitely follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio. And that'll keep you in touch with any announcements that have been forthcoming and such. So it was just a lot of fun. So I really appreciate that. Special thank you to Mr. Gio for having me on and for letting me be a part of it. It was great. And of course to Mrs. Gio. She was hanging out in the chat during that time and chilling out with all the listeners. So it was really cool. Great experience. And it was a wonderful time. I really appreciate it. But let's see. The phone lines will be open during the duration of tonight's show. So if you've got an experience of your very own that you'd like to share, please do. You can find our number on the top of the screen right over here. For those of you watching on YouTube, which is everybody right now because we're not on the network, are we? So, but the number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. And again, it's right there, right up above my finger here right in that small font, that small, hard to see font that I never fixed. Yeah, thanks, Julia. I know you keep reminding me, and I appreciate it, and I love you for it. But one of these days, I'll actually do it. It's just one of those things that keeps falling on the wayside. As I've got like this pile of things that I'm dealing with, and I whittle away at them, and it's like, oh, I'll do that one later, and that's always that one that I always figure I'll just do later, and could have been done a long time ago. But that's how I work. That's what goes on. That's the process inside of this head. It's not always pretty, ladies and gentlemen, but it's the only head I got. So what do you do? But welcome everybody. And if you don't want to call in, that kind of freaks you out, then feel free to email us. You can email us either with a story to share on the show, or if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out and let me know. You can reach me at, for either of those, at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Those are the email addresses. So great opportunities in any case. I love having you guys on when you guys have experiences to share, because those to me are really what caused me to do this show in the first place. And when I thought of the Paranormal Portal, it was always a listener-driven show, that you guys would participate in, and many of you have, and thank you for that. But every time I get someone calling in or being a guest on the podcast or just emailing, it's just so cool. I just have a ball with it, and it's been an incredible experience hearing what you guys have seen. And having an opportunity to talk to you about it has been incredible as well. I think that through the ability to talk, we've actually been able to find out a little more about the phenomena that was going on for both the experiencers and for us listeners. So anyway, those are the opportunities, but I got some ghost stories lined up for you tonight. So hopefully you will feel incredibly entertained throughout the duration of tonight's show, but at the very least, entertained. Unless I'm not doing my job or whatever, but hope you guys enjoy it. So I guess the first story tonight is coming from the state of California, and this one has, let's see, it's pretty long, so this one's going to take a while, so buckle up and hang on, because we're going in on this one. It says, my oldest daughter worked night shift, and she usually got home between 12:30 and 1 a.m., and it normally took her a while to unwind once she was home, and most of the time she would take a shower and then watch some TV in the living room until she got sleepy. Well, she told me one day that when she was up, our picture in the mantle started moving, and I was kind of in shock, and she said she got upset and shouted, "Uncle, stop it now." She said that it did stop and that she was glad. She said a lot of times she would hear steps in our hallway and she'd try to ignore it. And at times she would wake me up. And on one occasion when she woke up, I went into the living room with her and she said, "Mom, tell Uncle that we love him, but he needs to stop scaring us." I did say out loud that we love him and to let him know that he needs to help. That if he needs help with anything, but that one night it sounded like someone banged real hard on the back of the TV, and I asked my daughter if she heard it, and she did. For several months, our doorbell would ring, and when we would check, no one was there. I told my husband that maybe it was kids playing tricks on us, but he said that they can't run that fast. And my granddaughter, who was 20 months old when my brother passed, ran to our front door one day and was trying to open the door, and we asked her what she was doing, and she said, "Uncle wants to come in." She was so determined to open that door that we finally did it for her. And my daughter said that sometimes when she was driving, my granddaughter would be playing in the back seat, and a few times she would talk out loud. And this one time, my daughter and the baby's dad heard her say, "No, Uncle, I don't want to play anymore." I finally decided to go back to work after a few months, and I think it was September. I work in the health field, and so I have to wear uniforms, and I change my uniform every day, and on my days off, I wash all my work clothes. And the day that I did laundry, I was putting on all my uniforms in the wash, and on one of my shirts, a hospital name tag was on it with my brother's old room number. And there's no way that could have been on. I wore that shirt to work, and I would have noticed, or someone would have, because I have to wear a badge at work, and I was so shocked. All of my uniforms are always cleaned before going to work, and I showed my family, and they were just as much as shocked as I was. Things have slowed down a bit, though. On occasion, something happens, And I want to share with you now some things that have occurred recently. A few weeks ago, I was leaving my home. When I went to open my front door, I felt like someone was pulling the doorknob back. And it happened twice. I really felt like when I was opening the door that someone was trying to close it. I have a picture of my brother in the dining room, and it was him receiving his first communion when he was 12 at the time. Well, one day my grandson got a hold of it and broke the frame, and I took it away from him. And I then set it aside, and about after a week, I was looking at the picture thinking that soon I'll have to buy another frame. And when I heard a very soft woman's voice say, "I'm sorry," I was very stunned. My mother passed away on March 2nd, 2008. If you note, my brother was July 2nd. When she passed, I told my family, let's see if strange things happen a lot again. They didn't, like in the past. And the woman's voice I heard recently was not my mom's voice. Another incident that occurred was I was standing in my kitchen one morning drinking coffee, and you can see my front door right out the window. And I saw a woman, and it looked like she was walking out my front door, but the door was shut. I rubbed my eyes, and I even ran out the door, but she was gone. 2 days later, same thing happened. This time she was walking into my home, but the door never opened, and I saw her reach for the doorknob, and I remember she was wearing a sweater, and she was dressed very nice, but casual, and she had a purse with a strap over her shoulders. She had light brown hair that was curled all the way around. Her hair was a little above her shoulders, and I didn't see her face very well, and only the side of her each time. And I told my daughter about it, and she thought it may have been my mom, and I don't know, because my mom was 67 years old when she had passed, and this lady looked young. But I don't remember my mom having that kind of hairstyle. I had a good friend that passed away in October, and we hadn't seen or talked to each other in a very long time, and one day her daughter finally somehow got our number and called us. Well, she told us what happened, and the service had been 2 days prior to her reaching us, so I didn't get to attend, and I was hurt. She was 60 years old, and she had always had such a sweet voice. I wonder if maybe the woman I saw was her, and the voice that I heard. I do believe that when a loved one's spirit does stick around, that it does open the door for other spirits, and every once in a while when I sleep, I can feel someone pushing up on my mattress. My husband feels it as well at times, and now this other thing is going to be kind of hard to write about. One morning I got up and I went straight to the hallway bathroom to take a bath, and I didn't notice anything on me at the time. After my bath, I was drying off and getting ready to put my robe on when I noticed scratches all over my stomach. It looked like someone took a razor blade and just scratched in all kinds of directions on my stomach. I got dressed and I was very upset about what I saw, and I showed my husband, and he said, "My God, that looks like someone cut you all up." And I even showed the rest of the family, and I asked him if he thought something got into our bed, and he said he would have been cut up too. And I do know that I had a dream that someone was scratching my granddaughter on her stomach, and I was screaming in my dream, and though that was 2 nights prior to me having those scratches. I don't have long nails. In fact, they're very, very short. I had another dream the night before Halloween, and in my dream, I saw my mom and brother, and they looked the same. And I was sitting on the couch, and there was a man next to me, and the house had walls that was a very bright white, and my mom was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't understand her. And then she screamed out my full name to pay attention, and then she said, "Where they were, everyone stays young." Then she handed me a phone, and the number 3 kept popping up, and then she grabbed it and gave it back, and then it was the number 4. I'm not sure what she was trying to tell me, though my birthday starts with 3 and 4. It's March 4th. Also, my son's cell phone starts with those same numbers. And I also remember in the dream, my mom and brother were both lying down on their stomachs with their heads turned sideways, and I thought how unusual it is for them to lay down like that. Then I remember hearing my mom crying, saying she missed me. Then I grabbed my brother's hand and I kissed it, and I told them how much I loved and missed him and Mom. And then I woke up. Well, the following Wednesday, my youngest son had a wrestling match at his school. My other kids and I went, and at first the kids wrestle, and then the coach blows a whistle, and then they have to stop. Then one of them has to get on the floor on his stomach with his head sideways, and they wrestle again for a while. Did you get it? The same way my mom and brother did in my dream. I think my mom was really trying to tell me something. Shortly after my brother's passing, I had a dream that we were both standing outside near my front door. It was very foggy and he looked very healthy, and I asked him if he was okay, and he said yes. And I asked him if he saw God yet. He said, no, not yet, but I will. And then I said, where are you then? And he said, I'm in a waiting place. We all go there. And that was it. My dream ended. It seems so real. I need to stop here. There's so much more I'd like to share, but it's very hard to continue at times. I'll write another time. Wow. Huh. And there are other stories from this person that are on this site. You know, I'm almost interested in reading them because I think what she wrote is really profound. I don't know about that whole waiting place thing. That's interesting. And I don't know. What does that mean? Is it like, what was that Mel Brooks movie or something? Was it Mel Brooks? No, it was some Brooks. He did a movie where he died, and they kind of review your life and stuff, and they're in this place before either going back as a new baby or going on to the heavenly place. And I wonder if it's something like that these people experience. It's just very, very peculiar. I don't know. Somebody knows. Let me know. I forgot the name of that movie though. But hello to everybody that's come into the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, very, very peculiar, but a really good story. I mean, she did a great job writing it all down. That's pretty incredible. Here's a couple more. I've got a few more actually here. Got to get them all queued up for your listening pleasure. I'm going to keep that other one open because I may end up reading another one from that individual. And this one's coming from Pennsylvania. It says, this event took place in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I was the operations manager at a Marriott hotel at the time. I'd been working there for probably 4 months or so at the time, and I was mainly in charge of our housekeeping and maintenance staff, ensuring that the rooms and grounds were in peak condition at all times. One afternoon, I was making my rounds, and I checked behind housekeeping to make sure everything was to standards, and I was on the 3rd floor, and midway down the hall when I stepped out of room 312, I had just checked off on my clipboard, VR, vacant ready, when I lifted my head and looked to my left, and staring straight at me, about 2 doors down, was a man. And he was leaning on the threshold of room 320, and he was only visible from his belly area up. Our eyes met, and just as quickly as I had seen him and we made eye contact, he darted back in the threshold and was gone. I guess I wouldn't have thought too much about it, just a weird guess, but my rooms report that had that room listed as vacant dirty. And I figured maybe a guest had decided to maybe stay over and just hadn't notified the front desk, letting them know so. So I walked down to the room, knocked and identified myself, but no answer. I knocked once more and identified myself and opened the door. It was, in fact, vacant. I know that was the room that I'd seen him peeking out of, and it certainly creeped me out a smidge, but hey, what can you do? It was a hotel after all. My housekeeping staff was entirely Hispanic, and the only one spoke decent English, and my housekeeping manager. I went up to the 4th floor where my staff was and pulled Lourdes aside. I don't know if it's Lourdes or Lords, but and tried to explain to her what I saw. She immediately grabbed a couple of the other housekeepers and explained to them in Spanish what I had told her, and 3 of them looked at each other and smiled. They obviously knew something I didn't. Lourdes explained to me that on more than one occasion, the girls would tell her of experiences on the 3rd floor. I was told that before the construction of the hotel and Burger King next door, A graveyard had been moved, so maybe that could be the reason. Who knows? It seems like after that initial encounter, I would experience weird things such as PBX console alerting me to a 911 call being made from a room and on the third floor. And of course, though, each time the room would be unoccupied. I would always run up there just to be sure, and each time the room would be cold, frigid and cold. Anyways, I thought I'd share another story with you. It's not all that exciting, I know, but that experiences with the others have helped my understanding of the afterlife. That's amazing. That's kind of cool. I think that hotels are definitely one of those areas that would accumulate presences, and I don't think it's not just because those are places where people die. I think that can certainly be a part of it, but oh, thank you, Sean. Defending Your Life is the movie that I'm trying to think of with Mel Brooks. I think it's, or is it, what the hell is this guy's name? It's something Brooks. I don't know why I'm thinking Mel Brooks. That was Blazing Saddles, but some Brooks. And the movie's Defending Your Life. It was a very cool movie. I liked it. It was really a unique take on the whole afterlife life experience and what lies after this world. And I found it entertaining. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a comedy, but it's kind of heartfelt and heartwarming as well. So I don't know. I thought it was good. But thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. I love it when you guys help me think. This is a group effort. This hosting thing. I have a whole group of people helping me do this. But who knows? I guess it's hard to say. I find the waiting place. We're in the waiting place. That to me is peculiar. There's a lot of religions that embody that or embrace that idea that there's a holding pattern before this final judgment thing. And I guess it's possible that because that's the faith they have, that's what they will experience. And they'll be in this kind of a holding pattern for a while. And then someday, whenever they're, ready to move into the next experience, maybe then they go. I don't know. I mean, I can only speak of things from my own paradigm, and it's hard sometimes to understand how this all works. But we get different reports. I mean, we get people that have seen God or claim that they have, and we get people, that have seen religious figures like Buddha or Krishna or any number of the different deities that are observed in different religions, and Jesus and so on and so forth. And maybe they do. I don't know. I certainly think it's all possible. I think that there are many higher beings. It's not just us and then divine. I think that there are others, and maybe they are recognized as many different things. Who knows? I don't know. Just me spitballing as I'm going here, ladies and gentlemen, just thinking out loud, I guess, trying to ponder these possibilities, but it's pretty wild. Who knows what's next, but it does seem pretty clear that something's next. It's not just a nothing, at least in everything that I've studied and researched. So whatever that's worth, but to me, it gives me hope. It gives me a good feeling. So this one is coming from California, and it has to do with a haunted house. So let's see what's going on here. As a young girl, we moved around quite a bit, and eventually we moved away from the tropics and headed to California, where we first moved to the United States from the Canal Zone. It was strange to see how close together the homes were built. We moved into a new development called Santee Lakes, Santee Lakes, and the new homes were surrounded by older neighborhoods. And I loved the houses in our neighborhood as we overlooked a huge canyon, and at nighttime we would sit outside and stare at the blackness. Being that there were no lights to block out the stars in the night sky, we saw every single falling star, and it felt magical sitting there under a star-filled sky. It happened when I was 6 years old. The apparition came at me in the dark of the night. My parents hadn't come outside yet, and my mom was cleaning up in the kitchen after dinner, and Dad was overseeing my brother and sisters, and I sneaked outside, and I always felt better to be outside. I don't know why, it just did. A big family has lots of chaos, and mine was big and loud. Dad was always singing, and somebody was always calling out, and it never seemed to be quiet in my home. Sitting outside, I was relieved no one had noticed I was missing. It felt so nice to be in the dark, in the solitude, even if it was just for a few minutes. I wandered over to the edge of our yard and I looked down into the vast valley, and there were always things moving around down there. But I always assumed it was just animals, and there was rabbits and squirrels around and lots of birds. I saw the face floating above a grove of small trees. The trees were around a quarter mile below, and I thought it was an owl at first, and it floated towards me. And I could see the beginnings of a neck and arm and hips, and the ghost was dressed in a flowing blue pale gown. I saw that she had a cotton hat with lace around the edges, and it tied into a bow under her chin. Maybe it was Mary Poppins. As the apparition drew closer, I saw that she was a little girl, maybe a little older than me, and she smiled at me as she floated right past, and I remember being frozen to the spot. She went into my house and was gone from sight. In a minute, I waited for a minute or two, but she didn't come back, and running into the house, I looked for her. Normal stuff was still going on, and no one had seen her, I guessed, and I didn't say a word to anyone. But my dad asked me who I was looking for. I didn't answer him as I pulled open the closet doors and ran through all the bedrooms, and when I was convinced she wasn't hiding, I gave up on the search. Everybody started to go outside, and I was the last one out the door, and I was determined to find the girl, and she didn't reappear until my bedtime. I saw her playing with some of my toys on the floor, and I sat up in bed, and she faded away, and we only lived in this house for a couple years, but the ghost showed herself to me at least once a week. She traveled from the valley to my house almost weekly, and I wonder if she was buried there. I was looking up the history books one day, and I saw a picture of children dressed and running alongside of wagon trains, back in the prairie days of old, and when people headed west, and maybe this little girl was from this era. I guess I'll never know, but I went to the area a few years back, and the whole area was overdeveloped homes now that filled the valley, and our old home looked so different. I hoped and prayed she was at rest now, but who knows? Maybe she still haunts the old house. Wow. That's so tragic. Wow. Did I skip one? No, I didn't, did I? Oh, no. I should. There we go. Okay. Got it all lined up, all figured out here. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you all for coming in. The next story is again from California. Okay. It says, this is a continuation of my experience at the house. Oh, nice. Same author. I lived on 2nd Street, and I suppose I left this one out since it's an experience that was nothing like the others. If you read my first story, this event happened about a month after the voice in the parlor. Well, maybe it's a different author. I don't know. I thought it was the same. And before the Halloween party, in case some of the background story, this happened 10 years ago at a Victorian I rented in downtown San Jose. That night, before I turned off my light to go to sleep, I had turned to assess the room, and I wanted to make sure I knew where everything was so I wouldn't mistake any shadows while I laid in my bed. Strange things had been happening in my room, and I had been experiencing everything from moving shadows to strange touches in the middle of the night, and I'd begun dreading to turn off my light at night. I turned off the switch and hustled around to the left side of the bed. My boyfriend was already asleep on the right, and I pulled the blankets slightly down from my face when my eyes adjusted to the dark. Soon I started to feel a cold wave coming from my left. There was a presence at the side of the bed, even though I couldn't see it at that point. And I had felt this before, except it always remained at the foot of the bed. Once my sleep was interrupted by a hand shaking my foot. However, this time the presence felt like it was creeping closer. Suddenly a shadow appeared directly above me, and I could see the light-colored ceiling behind it. Shadows don't hover like a solid mass, as this one did. The darkest points in my room weren't as dark as the mass was. I was frozen, wanting to scream. I wondered if my eyes were playing tricks on me since it seemed like the darkness was inching closer. And as it got close, I noticed the top of it was small and ovular, almost the shape of a head. And just then, it came swiftly down towards me. While this has never happened to me, somehow I knew what was about to take place. Unable to move or speak, I was shouting in my mind, oh no, please no, not this, no, no, no. Wait a second. I hope this isn't going to get all funky. There was a darkness for several seconds, then a flash of light, then darkness again, another flash of light, and I recognized I was still in my room. The darkness lasted a second with the light only lasting half a second. The flashing was like a strobe light and so bright that it stung my eyes. When it flashed again, I noticed everything was in black and white, and I felt something at the end of my throat and all over my tongue. And I felt afraid to choke on it, yet for some reason I couldn't spit it out, and it felt like something unusual yet familiar. It felt like 100 tiny pieces of cork. What the hell? I was lying in the center of my bed, my body weak, though it was strange that my feet didn't reach near the edge of the bed where they normally touched. I don't know why my bed seemed larger and I felt much smaller. In my bed, I felt my straight, soft hair against me, and I couldn't remember straightening it that day. In my weak state, I tried moving in the bed, yet I was unable to move my legs and arms, and they were bound. I was so terrified and in a panic because I also couldn't figure out what was happening. I didn't know how the lights were strobing, and I didn't ever really feel like it was actual lights. It felt like it was coming from my eyes, and I wasn't even blinking. I don't know. I'm kind of nervous about what this is, but I don't want it to be one of those funky, sexual things. I looked up to the right, where my eyes would normally fixate whenever I laid in the center of my bed, and my tall dresser that was once my grandmother's wasn't at the center of the wall between the bathroom and closet doors. Instead, there was a smaller, long dresser sitting on the left closer to the bathroom. Large frame pictures were on the right of the wall closer to the closet. And during another flash, I saw a photograph of a cowboy in one of the pictures, something that I never put on my wall. There was no sound, as if I was watching a movie on mute, and I knew it wasn't just silence. I had a feeling that there should be sound. My eyes moved quickly into the bathroom door. I couldn't move my eyes. I stayed staring at the open door. Even though I couldn't hear anything, I sensed that something was happening in the bathroom, and somehow I knew that someone was walking through the adjacent door on the opposite end of the bathroom, which connects to my roommate's bedroom. The door has been permanently sealed ever since I've lived there. The strobing lights of the lights increased in speed, stronger and more painful to the eyes, and suddenly a man walked through the doorway, leaned up against the door frame, and this was not my roommate or anyone that I knew for that matter. Instead of a body of a man, his image was a shadow, a silhouette. And when I got a better look, I realized he was more than a shadow. He was a dark abyss. It was as if I could stick my hand into his silhouette and I would fall into this void. I could tell his arms were crossed and he was looking right at me. Even though he was completely black, I knew he was grinning in self-satisfaction. The dark man slowly strode up the right side of the bed, and when he sat on the bed, the strobe lights became so intense that it started to make a buzzing in my ears, and I guess light does have sound. My heart felt like it was going to pound out of my chest. With his head slightly tilted, I knew he was saying something to me as if in a comforting manner. I wanted to run. I'm just going to read ahead a little bit here. I don't want this to get all weird. Let's see. My heart felt responsible. I knew he was saying something. I wanted to run. I wanted to jump out of one of the large windows on the opposite end of the room, but the only thing I could do was keep staring at the shadow man in fright because it felt as though my life was about to end. With something long and thin in his hands, he reached towards my neck. Once again, there was total darkness. I gasped for air, and at some time, my eyes flipped open. I was back in my room. in what I abruptly realized was my own body. I immediately put my fingers to my mouth and to pull the shreds of cork off my tongue, though in my confusion I found that nothing was there. A shivering wave overtook my body as I began to cry uncontrollably. Whether it was my cries or from the bed shaking from my shuddering, my boyfriend awoke next to me and I was unable to explain what had happened or even speak a coherent word. All I could do was cling to his torso and cry as he attempted to soothe me. I kept thinking that it was her all along. In the darkness of my room that I've been sensing, it was her who had overtook me. She wanted me to see what happened to her in that very room when she lived there. She put me directly in her memory to see through her eyes, and that shadow man, she had cut him out of her memory, almost literally. I remember now the sense she had when she saw him. She knew him. I had felt her fear and it had dissolved into my own. I was so afraid of what I saw, I was even more terrified of seeing it again, if not more at the same time. I felt so out of control because I felt like I had no power over what I was experiencing. I also felt out of control since everything of what I thought I knew back then about the afterlife really wasn't all the truth. Perhaps she had wanted me to see what she went through in order to help her find her body or her killer. For a long time, whenever I thought this, a fear would begin to arise again inside of me. Even though the entity in my room had a person behind it, I didn't know what it was capable of. It was horrible what happened to her. In spite of that, she still terrified me. I never tried to search further for what happened because I was scared. I didn't even know how to begin to ask the owner about the estate's history. Of course, now I wish I had had enough courage. And then again, everything happens for a reason. Perhaps this experience was just to awaken me to what's really out there. One last thing I didn't include in my initial story was the final experience from that house. It wasn't me who had the experience. A year had passed and I was no longer living there. Sorry, I'm hitting puberty apparently. I had stopped at the house with my new best friend to pick up some items that I had left at the house. My friend had never been to that house before, and she also never had a supernatural experience before that day. My friend stayed behind in the living room as I went into my ex-boyfriend's room to collect some things. As she was waiting by the pool table, she looked up at the entrance to the kitchen. She was slightly startled to see a woman standing against the narrow wall to the right of the kitchen entrance on the split second from where she had laid eyes on her. My friend had thought perhaps it was a roommate or girlfriend of someone, and after that second was over, before greeting this person, she realized that the woman that was silently staring at her didn't have a body below her chest. What seemed like several minutes later, the entity finally disappeared. I noticed my girlfriend's discomfort when I emerged from the bedroom. I had thought it was from just the situation, and I remember she hurriedly passed me as we were leaving the house, but it wasn't until we were in my car that she told me of what took place. In that instant, I knew it was the same girl from the night in my room. My ex and my old roommate never experienced seeing her. I know it must have had to do with her distrust of men, since it was one that she knew that took her life. Thanks for reading. It took a lot out of me to write it. However, it feels great to share it with people that would finally fully understand what had happened to me. Yikes. We have a call, so let's get to this call. And this is area code 228. You're on the air. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. How are you, Brent?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, I've had a story come to my mind that is part of my memories, and you know, the more that I have seen, you know, heard people talk about their Sasquatch encounters, you know, and I had one of my own when I was like 13 of a type 4.
Okay.
And but I remember when I was 18, I hope you don't mind me sharing.
No, by all means,
When
please.
I was when I was 18, my grandparents had passed, and we had to move up to the middle of the Ozarks to go caretake their farm.
Oh, okay.
And they were very much pioneer people and really lived on the land. But my brothers would have to drive 150 miles to St. Louis to work each day and back.
Oh my God.
And it was in the middle of the Mark Twain National Forest. This farmhouse. It was on the edge and surrounded by wilderness. And it was 9 miles to town, to the nearest town. And it was very primitive area. But my brothers had come back home from work. They hit the showers, and it was Friday night. And I went to the shower, and I was going to, of course, I wanted to go to town. I had cabin fever. You know, gotta see people.
Right.
And so what I did was I went to the shower, and by the time I got out, they had gone off and left me.
Oh,
And town was 9 miles away.
oh,
And all the guns were in the truck with them, of course. And I was mad, and I had cabin fever, and I was 18 and
hmm,
full of gumption, and I was just mad. So I got dressed and I started walking to town. Now, mind you, there's only 3 farmhouses on the way to town, and
oh,
that included my grandmother's house
oh,
as well.
okay.
And I was walking, and I'd say for about the first mile, I was keeping a steady pace, and I was just so angry thinking about my brothers. I wasn't really listening to anything going on around me.
Uh-huh.
I was just kind of angry.
Right.
I was heading for town. I wanted a beer. But it all of a sudden, when I stopped thinking about all that, I noticed that it was incredibly quiet. And I
Oh,
mean incredibly quiet. And so I was walking, and there wasn't a moon out that night. It
hmm.
was just pitch black dark.
Oh,
What was I thinking? I was just stubborn-headed, young girl.
right.
And I kept walking the white line of the road. Now, this road goes all the way to town, and it's 9 miles to town. It takes 3 miles an hour, of a good pace
Right.
to get down in timely manner. It took me 3 hours to walk this trek,
Oh man.
and I knew it would, before I even set out.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, I was walking along, and I heard the branches in the woods. I heard them crackle with the leaves. And, at first I didn't think nothing of it. I'm in the middle of the wilderness. There's all kinds of critters usually.
Right.
But I wasn't hearing any other animals. I wasn't hearing coyotes in the distance. I wasn't hearing anything.
Uh-huh.
And except for those branches. And I was walking about, I don't know, I speeded up my pace to about 3 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
That's a steady walking pace, nonstop.
Uh-huh.
And for every 20 steps I took, they took 1 step. And it sounded like a hop leap because the way they'd land on the leaves and the branches on the side of the road. And, I was starting to get really frightened. That incredible amount of fear came over me. But it was too late to turn back and go to the farmhouse. you
Right.
know. I
Hmm.
mean, that would have been a shorter walk, yes, but there was no one home. My mother had gone to spend time with an aunt down in the Boot Hill of Missouri, and so there wasn't anyone at home either. So I knew I needed to get to town to find my brothers,
Right.
at least get to civilization.
Hmm.
And, it was stupid of me to do this and stubborn-headed, too, but, I was young and just fearless, but boy, I was sure full of fear, and I kept chain smoking cigarettes back to back, and I was just keeping a steadily fire going, and I mean, for every 20 steps I took, I could hear a leap, and I would hear the branches crash and
Hmm.
the leaves at the same time, you know,
Right.
and I got paralleled all the way to town. It was a little one-horse town, okay, very tiny town.
Mm-hmm.
And I got paralleled all the way to town. And, I kept thinking in my mind, I had seen a Sasquatch eye to eye when I was 13 or so,
Sure.
but that didn't pop in my head. I was in the middle of the Ozarks, and I thought, well, is that the panther everybody talks about around here?
Right.
And
Right.
because the gate was so long, okay? I mean, for, every one of my 20 steps at 3 miles per hour, and I'm just hearing one of theirs
Yeah. Wow.
keeping up. And I,
That,
and I thought, well, that's got to be a cat that's leaping forward and doing that. And I
mm-hmm.
thought, well, that's just great in the back of my mind. It didn't pounce out and get me. I never heard a sound. And the woods were you're in the middle of the wilderness, and there was no moon out, but there was no sound. It was the same effect as when I had seen a Sasquatch the first time in
Mm-hmm.
life.
Wow.
But I didn't dare look left. I didn't dare look right, Brent.
I don't
I
blame you.
knew my life was in serious danger. I felt it. And, thank goodness that they had a white line in the middle of the road,
Sure.
a two-lane road to town, because I really was focused on staying on that white line and
Yeah.
not veering off of it. And I'm going, there's mountain curves, and
Right.
talk about a stubborn-headed young lady. And I managed to make it to town. My
Mm-hmm.
brothers weren't at the bar, didn't know where they were. All I knew is I sat there and I drank quite a few beers, and I didn't go home till the sun came up.
Oh, how'd you get home then?
Well, I caught a ride home with the barkeep. The
Oh.
barkeep, when they closed the bar, they gave me a ride home.
Oh, nice.
It was a very little bitty town. It's
Sure.
up in Missouri, and it was near Clearwater Dam.
Wow.
Very scenic, very beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
but very, very desolate.
I've
But
heard.
Brent, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking it was a cat all the way to town, and my mind never registered that it was probably a Sasquatch. And the
Yeah.
more I, talk to people about encounters and hear their encounters and know my own, the more I started thinking about that, of how it leapt and how many feet it was. And, I can only deduce that perhaps it was a Sasquatch.
Right. Wow. Well,
Had,
that's
and I'm talking to you about it because, I've never had a cat, a big cat, trail me in the woods or parallel me in the woods like that.
yeah.
And I know there are some people that have experienced stuff like that, but I personally didn't know what that sounded like. I just deduced maybe it was. And I kept thinking in the back of my mind, no, a cat would have pounced out on that road.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Probably.
um,
Yeah.
cats are fearless. I kept thinking, and I tell you what, it was a horrified 9 miles to town,
Never.
all the way to town. And Brent, it wouldn't have been so bad, but for about every 20 steps I took, they took one.
Wow.
And it was just one leap, and I'd hear branches crack and leaves crack, and
So it was really.
and I never really discussed that with anyone.
Uh huh. It was
But
really intentional,
number
though.
one,
I mean, it
I
sounded
had just never.
really intentional,
I'm
right?
sorry.
No, no, no. But it sounded like it was really intentional. Like it wanted you to know it was there. It wasn't like a cat, because a cat will be stealthy. I mean, they don't broadcast their presence necessarily. They go low, and they work at being silent so they can ambush. I mean, that's what they do. Cats don't stomp and break sticks and make a lot of racket. So I believe you completely.
Well, I tell you what, the next time that my brothers came in on a Friday night from working, and I sure made sure I took my shower early on Friday night, and you can bet your bottom dollar I beat them to the truck every Friday night.
Good for you. Yeah, you don't want to make that journey twice. Nope.
Well, I mean, on the road that we lived, there was two vehicles that went down in a day. That was
Oh,
a work truck full of guys, and my brother's coming and going from work.
You know,
And that was the only vehicles that traveled this road.
I've heard a
and
lot of stories coming
a
out of the
two
Mark Twain forest. That's a pretty. There's been a lot of sightings come out of that forest. To be honest with you, I can think of a few right offhand. Just I know I've heard that location
well this
mentioned.
and this is kind of gory related. My grandmother, she was half Cherokee,
Hmm.
and she went hunting at 3 in the morning and whatnot. She was a very serious pioneer woman, and at the time of her death, she had there was a dump where she'd dump all the stuff you couldn't burn or compost or
Hmm.
give to the animals. Okay, and it was behind the barn, and she had rode the tractor out behind that barn umpteen years
Hmm.
to dump the trash. Okay, and the tractor fell over on her,
Oh, geez.
and it pinned her for like 24 hours.
Oh my
Now,
God.
this is a woman who's got driven a tractor the majority of her life.
Hmm.
This was a dump she had been going to and fro for many years. She knew every curve, every hill. She didn't have a heart attack. It's just the tractor fell over on her and pinned her.
Oh my
And
God.
you're right, and it's a horrible death. But you know what hit my mind when I thought about that, and I thought about that long walk to town?
Hmm.
I thought, well, I wonder if she went to the dump and actually saw a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And I wonder if she turned the wheel and gunned it, or I really wondered about her death after that.
Yeah.
It was just in the back of my mind. Somebody who's driven a tractor to their own little dump for many years,
Hmm.
and was very adept for the tractor to fall over on her. Because, even the relatives and the coroner, nobody could figure out how that tractor turned over on her.
What if it was rolled over onto her?
Well, and that's exactly where my mind went with that, Brent.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
And
know.
then that long walk to town, and hindsight's 2020, and I'm scratching my head about that, going,
Yeah.
because this is a woman who went out in the middle of the Mark Twain National Forest at 3 o'clock in the morning, okay, and went hunting, and
Jeez.
never came home empty-handed. And
Jeez.
then she cooked a full meal, okay, and after that full meal, you got up and you went out and you picked that 5 acre row of peas. You had farm work to do. You were a kid that was there.
Hmm.
So we're talking about a really very tough woman that had probably seen a lot the majority of her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was and she died of natural causes. It was because the tractor fell over on her.
Right. Oh man.
And,
That's a heartbreaker.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Well,
and that was pretty wild. I kept thinking about that and going, are we real pressed for time?
no, we're okay. We got about 10 minutes or 8 minutes left.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you about a dream, but I can't tell you about these people that were in my dream, so I'm going to use pronouns and whatnot, okay,
Oh,
in
sure.
order to, that's confidentiality.
Absolutely.
But I had this really wild dream, and I had not been cyber squatching online,
Hmm.
but I had a really wild dream. And I was over at a friend's house, and my brother was with me, and we were unloading lumber out of a truck onto their carport, and we were chit-chatting and talking about going on a squatching expedition, of all things.
Okay.
And we were all excited about it, and this friend of mine had a young adolescent child, and we were all pretty happy, and we were talking, and that it was during the day, and we were all tired, and the child went and laid down on Boulder Rock. Now, mind you, I've never lived where there was large boulders unless it was the Ozarks.
Hmm.
Uh, and the child had laid down, and I had curled up next to the child, and we were comfortable. But all of a sudden, we decided, well, it was time to go into the house,
Hmm.
and we went into the house, and then before I knew it, it was the next day. And my brother came running up and said, "Hey, look, we don't have to go squatching anywhere." He said, "I can show you lots of them right here." And I can still almost hear my brother just vividly telling me about this with excitement, and he wasn't smiling, and so it really scared me.
Uh-huh.
He was saying, "Y'all got to see this." And
Right.
so me and the friend of the house we were at and my brother, we crept. Dreams are like flashes sometimes,
Sure.
but we crept over some land, and there was this valley like, but the valley was devoid of a lot of trees. It just looked like it had just been bulldozed and dug out, and we crawled the roots that were poking through the soil all the way up to the ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And we barely peeked over the ridge, and when we did, there was hundreds of Sasquatch standing there,
Oh,
and they were
geez.
on the next ridge over, and they all had their hands swinging. Okay,
Mm.
they were down by their sides, and they were all rocking from left foot to right foot and staring at the same time. And I mean, there was hundreds of them,
Mm-hmm.
friend. And it's like that's when I woke up.
Yeah, that's enough to keep you awake, to wake you up.
And I remember the person's house that I was at. We all ran home to his
Oh,
house,
yeah.
and that person comforted their adolescent child and put him to bed and told them it'd be all right. We went about just doing ordinary things in houses people do.
Sure.
But
Wow.
what disturbed me about this dream was, goodness, why would I have seen hundreds of them, standing there? And
Yeah.
as I saw them, okay,
Mm-hmm.
they were shooting orbs from their eyes, their red glowing
Oh,
eyes, okay, and those seemed to come towards us. And I was
wow.
really glad none of us got hit.
Yeah. I wonder what that would have done, what would that be?
I don't know, but keep in mind I hadn't been cyber squatching or seeing any videos prior to having this dream. So it was really wild squatching was definitely on my mind.
Yeah, well, it'll be that season pretty soon. I don't know if you ever go out or not, but it'll be, if you do go out,
Oh yeah.
well, it may be already where you are though. It's warm there, right?
Ah, well, yeah, I live about a mile from a river.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's usually travel routes is right along rivers, so they might be cutting through your yard.
Yeah. Well, right. I live on a couple of acres too.
Oh,
And
wow.
but yeah, I've not looked for any tracks in my yard. Sometimes I feel like they're around, and I don't want to go look, Brent.
Yeah, sometimes not knowing is much more comfortable for sure. Just look
Yeah,
straight
go
ahead.
ahead, call me chicken. You
No,
know.
I don't blame you. I mean, because if it's knowing something's there, you can't unknow that. But if you don't know, then you can make any reality you want. So I don't blame you because when it's your home, that's got to be your sacred space. And if you're not ready to have them like
Oh
looking in
yeah,
your windows, it's best not to know they're there.
yeah. Yeah, I don't ever want my house tapped on. I've
Yeah,
had
I
tents
know.
tapped on before, but I don't want my house tapped on.
Yeah, I understand completely. But thank you
But
so
what was
much.
just so bizarre about that dream
Hmm.
was hundreds of them,
Yeah,
and and I thought, oh my goodness, it would have been one thing to dream about seeing one, or just have a dream of a nightmare dream of the first one I saw that was a type 4, or
hmm,
but hundreds of them, I thought, oh my,
yeah. That's
that's a little bit too many there.
yeah. We hear stories about what one or two can do. You imagine what hundreds of them could do. Eesh.
Well, now you're understanding the fear
Yeah,
that was within me within that dream. That's
yeah,
exactly what I was thinking.
yeah. It's like, oh, there's not much we could do. I don't think to stop that many. You'd need a tank and a whole lot of a whole lot of firepower, I think, to put a dent in that. But thank God it was just a dream. Whew.
No doubt. Well,
Yeah.
this is Hazel, and love you all. And your crowd down in YouTube chat, it just rocks, Brent.
Yeah. We got.
There's some wonderful people there, and
Yeah.
hello to all. And tell Don he can't go beardless and topless at the same time.
No, we'll keep them clothed. I promise.
Let me clarify that. That topless means Don takes his hat off every now and then,
Oh,
guys.
okay. That makes a little more sense, and it's less uncomfortable.
Thank you. Yeah, I heard you talking about, you didn't want to read something. It might be a little uncomfortable there. Can't say I blame you.
Yeah, there's some things I try not to
And
cover.
how have you
But
been? You doing all right? How's everything going? Tell us about all your new stuff you got going on.
well, we're always busy here. There's always things coming up. There's going to be a conference coming up in Medellin Falls in Washington that we're going to be going to in the beginning of March, and we're going to be doing a live broadcast from there. That's the newest thing that's under the works. So there's a lot of prep going into that, and we're going to be at the International Bigfoot Conference in Washington State as well later this year in September. So there's a lot of things on the radar for the Paranormal Portal this year. So here's to hoping we can make it explode in a good way.
Oh, well, that's really wonderful. Congrats. It sounds like big fun.
I hope it will be. We'll
I'm
find
sure
out.
you're going to tune us in. The wonderful people that are in the YouTube chat, I'm
Oh,
sure
sure.
you're going to let us know when. And,
Oh, sure.
are
Yep.
you're going to and let us see, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'll do a live stream from both of those locations for sure. So we'll get a bunch of
Yay.
and possibly a few interviews for the podcast and the show. So we'll get as much of it documented as we can for y'all.
All right. Well, God bless you all, and thanks for enduring my stories, and love you all.
All right, love you too. Have a great night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See you now. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's our journey. Thank you again for the call, Five Hazel. That's wonderful to hear from you. And to all of you guys out there, thank you so much for being here. Looks like my YouTube counter went just to zero. Went right down to zero, but I can still see there's chat going on, so I know I'm not alone. But I love you guys bunches. Thank you so much for being here. Check out the podcast. Another new episode will be coming up. Let's see, on Wednesday, but there's a new live one up today. It's really good. It's Mike, who's a retired deputy sheriff or a former deputy sheriff and logger in the Oregon, Northern California areas, and he's on the podcast today and shared some of his experiences, some incredible experiences. So if you haven't listened to that, head over to Pandora, Spotify, iHeart, or iTunes, or any other platform you get your podcast from, and give it a listen. If you like the podcast, head over to iTunes and give us a nice review. That'll help us a bunch getting the podcast promoted to other listeners. So as always, check the links in the description for the Teespring, for shirts and other gear of the Paranormal Portal. That goes a long way to help us. And as well, check out the Bandcamp link if you like the Paranormal Portal music and you'd like to check out some of those. That's on Bandcamp, and the link is in the description as well. What am I missing? Oh, yeah. The Paranormal Portal Paranormal Investigation Journal is here. That is available on Amazon, and you can find that link in the description as well. So all kinds of ways to help to support the show, other than, of course, donations too. But it's all up in the air. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for taking the time, spending it with us here. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll be back tomorrow night to do it all over again. So I'll see you then, guys. Good night. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. Good night, everybody.